Saudi Arabia brought the entire $20 trillion world economy down to its knees in 1973 and 1974. They launched an oil embargo against the United States, which crippled the economy and its military. It didn't matter that America had the most powerful war machine ever. How on earth would they transport it everywhere in the world if they didn't have the fuel to do it? But then America offered the Petrodollar agreement to Saudi Arabia, which accepted. The gist of it would be that Saudi Arabia and eventually all of OPEC would only price their oil and sell it in US dollars. Doing that secured further the supremacy of the US dollar, and it guaranteed Saudi Arabia supremacy over all of OPEC. You've been hearing stories that the petrodollar agreement has expired after a 50-year contract. Look at the MarketWatch article showing all of the Google searches for petrodollar in this month. But you should Google the article written by Paul Donovan, where he states that the agreement was initially intended to last only 5 years, but it just got repeatedly extended into perpetuity, meaning there was no 50-year, no 70-year, and no 80-year agreement for any such thing. Now here's the thing. Oil has been sold in other currencies for over 25 years. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, about 8 to 9% of all trade done in oil was not done in US dollars. But 90% of all oil trade was. But now it looks like 20% of all sales done in oil is done in non-dollar currencies, because Russia is responsible for 11% of the world's oil production. Now that Russia can't sell their oil in euros or dollars, they have to sell it in yuan and any other local currency that they can. Same with Iran, which accounts for about 4% of global oil production. That doesn't mean that Saudi Arabia has stopped selling their oil for dollars. Just take a look at the pie chart of the 10 most liquid currencies in the world, and you see we have over half of the world's liquidity, while China has about 2.3%. And why does China only have 2.3%? Because China only allows between 1 to 2% of their currency to leave the country. Over half of America's currency is outside our borders. If China allowed even 10 or 20% of their currency to leave the country, it would be the greatest disaster they've seen in the past 50 years. That is why over 75% of Saudi Arabia's currency reserves are in US dollars, about 437 billion. It's also why they're holding on to $120 billion in US treasuries. Two reasons why both numbers have been going down. The first is that they've been spending heavily on building infrastructure outside of oil. The second is COVID, which crushed world demand for oil, and they have been depleting their reserves to recoup the losses. But they have over $200 billion of their own debt, which they have priced in US dollars. This is a chart of the Saudi Arabian currency compared to the dollar. You know why it's this long flat line? Because the Saudi Arabian rial is pegged to the United States dollar. It means that Saudi Arabia is unbreakably economically tied to the United States dollar. It also means that Saudi Arabia can never leverage America the way they did in 1973. Once that oil embargo was lifted, the United States formed the International Energy Agency, the IEA for short. It's composed of over a dozen non-OPEC countries that also produce energy. Their sole mission is to counter any kind of OPEC manipulation. Take a look at average oil production by the IEA member countries from 1975 to today, and you could see it's almost doubled. Mainly the United States leading the way at 13 million barrels of production per day. We import 60% of our oil from Canada, 10% from Mexico, and only 7% from the Saudis. You probably hear a lot of uneducated conservatives saying that we only have 17 days of production in our strategic reserve. That's not true. We have over 140 days of import protection. If the entire world, aside from the United States, suffered a nuclear holocaust, yes, we would only have 17 days of oil. But as long as world trade exists, we have enough of our SPR and oil to buy from the other IEA countries to give us, again, over 200 days of protection, just in case OPEC wants to embargo us again. The amount of average miles per gallon of an American vehicle has gone from about 12 to 27, meaning today's cars require at least half of the amount of gas compared to 50 years ago. And that's fine, because Saudi Arabia doesn't need to leverage America or the West that way any further. America may not need Saudi Arabian oil, but China, Japan, and India certainly do. And the Saudis have been quite shrewd with allowing China, India, and still the United States to woo them with whatever they can. The Saudis are masters at playing the advantages of each of these three countries against one another. And then there's the fact that they are resource rich beyond oil. They have over 2.5 trillion in mineral wealth aside from petroleum. The price of fertilizer keeps going up almost every week, and phosphate is an essential component. They have hundreds of billions of dollars in unmined gold. And then there's the bauxite, copper, and zinc. But the Saudis are still very dependent on oil revenue to be able to extract the wealth from each of these resources. There is only one currency that has the easiest liquidity to provide that wealth: the US dollar. That's why the petrodollar still exists, and if it didn't, the price of oil wouldn't be $78 a barrel, it would be closer to 150, 200. And last year, China's stock market lost about $5.1 trillion in wealth, so I don't really think the Saudis would want to price their oil in yuan. My name is the Geo Hussar, and the people who are trying to convince you that the petrodollar is over are the same people who tried to create a bank run in early of 2023. They want to take away your security in your money, so you take out your deposits and somehow damage the US banking system. Use your brain. Be objective. Take all of the information that I have stated and verify it for yourself. Thanks for watching.